Well, that happened. All right. Well, welcome to the NerdBrand podcast, everybody. We're back. It's 2021, and this show we're talking about elements of storytelling, spectacle, and Wonder Woman 1984. And we're not doing a year in review, but let's get going. That's Mitch, that's Laura, or maybe that's Laura and that's Mitch, depending on how your screen may show it. On mine, Mitch is over there, Laura's down there, and let's kind of chat a little bit about spectacle. Last two podcasts we talked about plot and character, and spectacle is a kind of, I think, don't want to bring up too much stuff that's happened, but I had a lot of spectacle.
There's been a bit of spectacle lately, hasn't there?
Yeah, everything's pretty much been like spectacle.
Spectacle out the wazoo.
Yeah. This episode though is just kind of anybody that may be new to this on this podcast, we like discussing our love of movies and all things nerd culture. We also like to talk about marketing and things from a nerd's point of view. And so this is our third part series. But I guess before we get into spectacle, Mitch has a tidbit. Mitch, you want to share with everybody what you got?
Yeah, well, a couple of tidbits. First of all, in nerd news, it's been announced that Michael Keaton's Batman will reportedly get his own saga or at least a movie, and will be the main Batman in the DC film universe.
Huh. Michael Keaton's like what? Is he 70?
Something like that.
Yeah. So I liked Michael Keaton's Batman. I have no problem with it, but I don't know. For me, I like Batman Begins because it kind of like really dove into the history of the character more than his version, as far as like the man behind the mask. I don't know. I would really like it if they did a Batman Begins with him as Bruce Wayne. Yeah. I'd like to see a Terry McGinnis, because that's the only person that I accept, and I think most people accept.
You're talking about Batman Beyond.
Yeah, a live action Batman Beyond is what I'd like. I think
for those that aren't familiar, that's Batman of the future.
Yes. And
kind of like Spider-Man 2099.
Yeah, but it was only ran. It was an animated series that only ran for about 3 seasons. Kind of ended early, and then because it ended early, there's a lot of questions left about it, opened, and a lot of the fans were kind of upset. So in Justice League, in I think it was 2004 when that was issued, there's a episode called Epilogue that actually made Terry McGinnis Bruce Wayne's son. And it tied it to Suicide Squad, where Amanda Waller took Bruce's DNA and cloned Terry. And so that was kind of it was a really good episode, though. I mean, it really was. And it kind of, all the characters you could see come back, and they made Bruce obviously a little older because Terry was, older, because when he becomes Batman, he's like 17 or something.
Yeah.
So it's very Spider-Man type of storyline, but it's Batman and a better suit.
In your opinion?
Yeah. I mean, I liked it. I liked it. I mean, it's something that I've always wanted to see a live action of. And I'm like, well, if you want to have any kind of continuity in the Tim Burton-esque world of the weirdness that he created, I think it would work fine. I think it would fit. It wouldn't be a big leap. But I don't know. Him as the main Batman moving forward. I don't know.
I guess he's the anchor Batman.
World.
And this actually, I'm getting this from geektyrant.com.
Yeah.
And there's part of their source comes from Brooks Barnes of the New York Times, who put out a tweet. Actually, there's two of them. One of them stated, "Been offline, moving apartments, and returned to see this Michael Keaton craziness. I was referring to one film that Keaton has been announced as being in, not a set of his own films." So there's that. But then somebody posed a question to him that said, based on your piece, some have interpreted that Warner Brothers is doing 2 franchises starring Batman, one with Pattinson and one with Keaton. Apparently Keaton is the anchor going to be the anchor Batman.
It's fine. I'm not, like I said, I'm not complaining about it. I'm always for more Batman, but Warner Brothers right now, and we'll get into this because we are going to talk about Wonder Woman 1984. I don't know if have y'all seen it?
I've just seen clips and trailers.
Okay, Laura, have you seen it?
Clips and trailers.
Okay, so I will not do anything spoilerish. Um, so yeah, we'll get into that. So
I've got one more bite.
Uh-huh.
Morsel. This is for the tech nerds out there, and this is from TechCrunch.com. And this might not be brand new news, but it may not be common knowledge, or it may be. But apparently, Google, a group of Google employees have decided to unionize. A group of more than 200 Google and Alphabet workers have announced the formation of the Alphabet Workers Union, according to the New York Times first reported it. With the help of the Communications Workers of America's union campaign to organize digital employees, the union will be open to both employees and contractors.
Yeah, that's kind of big. I mean, we all read in the past Google's had some problems. They just released another algorithm update in December that kind of really messed anybody up in the sector of telecom or internet like us. The rankings are all wonky. Our people have dropped traffic. They've just all kinds of stuff happens, and Google doesn't really make those announcements. And then the one thing that they do announce is like, oh, the workers are unionizing, and there's been some pretty dissatisfied people that work there. So I don't know. It seemed like this should have happened maybe 2 years ago, or could have. It's just, I guess, I don't know. Maybe we got to a boiling point, and they just decided, all right, enough's enough. We're unionizing because we're not getting fair treatment or being heard. So I don't know.
Well, it's kind of, because Google's been like this unfettered growing now they're in this huge massive thing they are now, but they've just kind of been growing exponentially year after year after year after year, both in size and in influence. You wonder if, and granted, it's only 200 employees right now, which doesn't sound like all that many when you consider how many people Google employs.
I don't know about an employer. That sounds like quite a few.
Yeah. I wonder if it puts the brakes a little bit on some of that expansion that's been taking place year after year after year after year.
Well, with all the stuff going on in DC with regulations and everything coming up, we're going to see a lot of changes this year in big tech. Advertising is the cost for advertising continuously goes up, since this is, keep things relevant here on this podcast for those listening. The cost of advertising is going up. It doesn't matter what form it's in, to be able to reach an audience. And with Google going through what it's going through, and Facebook what it's going through, and Twitter, if somebody was to come to me and want to hand me money to do like Facebook ads. And for those listening, yes, John is not with us today. He's feeling sick, but he said it's not COVID. He's just little, he's probably just wore out. He just
doesn't. Yeah.
They had a baby.
Yeah.
That's one good thing about 2020 for John. They had a baby, a healthy baby girl. So he's probably just not sleeping. Yeah, there's a lot of interest in anything bright and shiny and new, which he was going to talk about today. He's going to talk about TikTok and LinkedIn and some stuff, but we'll put that into the next podcast. We'll save that for when he's here for that. But yeah, advertising and where that money's going to go is going to definitely change this year because of all these things that are happening. So it's going to be a very interesting year in our world as far as media buys and things like that go. But
the allocation of resources, as it were.
Yeah, a lot of that's going to change. Employers are changing allocation of resources because of, we're heading into the final stretch, hopefully, of the pandemic, and getting the virus exterminated by the vaccine by, everyone hopes, June. I think it might be as late as July, but we'll see. But yeah, I think there's a lot more changes coming up that's going to hurt, and people are not maybe going to be prepared for. But so, not saying it's more of the same of 2020, but we're still dealing with some stuff. And so organizations will be feeling it. But anyways, how does spectacle and Wonder Woman tie to What we do? Well, Wonder Woman's a brand. DC is. This is something they're putting out there as a product, and it was sort of pumped up and to be this awesome movie of the year that 2020 needed to rescue 2020, and unfortunately, it didn't. Um, I I'm a big fan of Wonder Woman. I like Wonder Woman. I loved the first movie. I had a problem with the third act, like everyone else, you know. But at the end of the day, it's this one here. Just I had a lot of problems with it. Um,
Well,
and
what was
so,
interesting is the fact that it when it first launched, there was a lot of hoopla, and a lot of the critics were, and this, I mean, pretty much globally, uh, critics were hailing it and loved it. But then you looked at like Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb and the ratings that actual viewers, people that bought tickets or bought it, viewed it, remotely from home, uh, started to be a pretty steep decline. I thought that was interesting.
yeah, I don't know why putting money in HBO Max. I think for me, and this is just my opinion, but the writing is starting to form on the wall with HBO Max versus Disney Plus and the quality of content and what we want to see or what we would prefer to see. Um, if I'm going to spend money, I'm going to go with Disney Plus. And I say that like I'm kind of in both worlds because of the Marvel DC behind me. But comic book wise, I'm more DC because of stuff like this. This is an older comic. You notice Batman's holding a gun, so I have stuff like that. So I'm a Batman guy. I'm a DC guy, but I've given DC as a consumer my monies since Zack Snyder got a hold of Man of Steel and that movie came out. I watched it, and it was a very lumbering film. I mean, it was like up and down, up and down. And I'm like, okay, he's beat them. Nope, not yet. Beat them. Nope, not yet. Kind of had that feeling about it. I loved the casting. I did like the casting. I think that Zach and his wife do a very good job of that. But then when you get to, we got the Batman versus Superman. When it was announced, I immediately hated the title. I just did. I hated the title. I felt like, why did you not go with World's Finest? Even the real storyline of World's Finest, where Batman and Superman screw up and it causes a guy to die because they were not working well together. And so every year they would meet to sort of make amends and pay memorial to that person that was killed because these two knuckleheads couldn't get their crap together when working with each other. And that's kind of what solidified that. And I was like, that's a great storyline. You could have done that instead of this Martha, save Martha.
The Martha moment.
Yeah. And so I was like, okay, all right, well, 0 for 2. When then we got what was the next one that came out? They came out was it Wonder Woman? It was actually the third release, the first
Yes.
Wonder Woman, huh?
Yes, I think it was.
Yeah, and I watched it, and I went to the theater for these, so I'm a moviegoer, and I was like, okay, awesome. The third act was kind of hard to see. I just I'm not ancient, but turn the light up. I mean, you got this bright, great Themyscira with the Amazons and all of this, and it's great. And then we get to the ending, and it's like, okay, so the villain is a skinny guy with a mustache. What happened? I don't get this. And then, of course, and I'm like, the whole time, I mean, this is a product they're serving people, and it's kind of no different if you're a business that sells jams or whatever. You're serving a product that's building a reputation. And as you build this reputation, there's expectations that people are also learning about you as you go. And it just seems like the brand strategy, which is really what this whole spectacle thing is, like behind it, it's like DC kind of broke into a boardroom and said, here's all of our characters. Here they are. We're going to make movies on all these people. You know why? Because nobody really knows who all these people are, but they know who these people are. So we're going to do that. And that's kind of, and I'm like, this took 10 years. you tried to do this with 3 movies in 2, and that was the failure. There wasn't really a whole lot of prep. Anybody got some opinions on that?
Well, no, I mean, well, going back to what you're saying, I mean, Marvel took 10 years to build a following, to build a brand, the cinematic brand, and to get people invested in those characters.
Yeah.
That, like you said, that takes time. I mean, you have to kind of give people a chance to take the package and open it up and look inside and become acquainted and find out who these people are, and actually give these people motivations that the audience can relate to. And like you said, Disney just kind of took them on, threw them out. Love them because they've been around for a long time. Love them because they've been around for 50 years. They just kind of banked on the fact that they were maybe already so woven into the culture that they didn't have to do the work to make people actually care about them.
Yeah, and that's kind of spectacle. Spectacle is about the wow. It's about creating that. You're trying to create a memorable moment. Didn't really go off very well. Laura, you're obviously behind you, Star Wars fan. Yes. Do we dare talk about that one? Because honestly, it had its
that's been hit or miss.
Yeah, it's had its.
And I think that Disney picks it up thinking that kind of like the brand is good and everybody's always loved this brand, so let's buy this brand and it'll just magically continue to blossom. And it's kind of like the goose who laid the golden egg, but then
well, yeah, I mean, there's I mean the thing, it's in the parallel between when you look at what was done with Star Wars and what was done with the DC characters, and the similarities and the errors, I think, are pretty clear. I mean, you have to do the work. You have to do the work of storytelling. I mean, spectacle. Star Wars always has. There has been a huge spectacle quotient to it from the first time the Millennium Falcon blasted into hyperspace and the stars came flying at you this way in that movie theater. I mean, to me, that's one of the defining spectacle moments.
They've done it with the scrolling words.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
But the spectacle came in when they started with, The Force Awakens. I mean, it was a newly acquired property because, when Star Wars came out, everybody was like, what the crap is this? But I think the Disney spectacle came in when they, episode 6 or 7. And, Laura, you were going to say something.
You're talking about pre-Disney.
I think they lost sight of the fan.
Yeah.
They are they're still in the mindset of the Disney fan instead of the Star Wars fan.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, in the Marvel stuff that I'm seeing on Disney, it's because I have Disney Plus, so they're kind of leaning in the same bent, of, well, we know what Disney fans want. Well, you acquired somebody else's fans, so they're not really Disney fans. You have to look at it from their perspective. Just like when we're building a website, we have to build it to accommodate the audience that's going to be viewing it, not the way we want everything.
That's a good point. Yeah, because when we do web, I mean, if we're doing a website that is for a retirement resort or something for seniors or whatever, we're not going to use 12-point font on the web page. We're not going to use. I mean, you're
not going to use a lot of flash and glam. That's
well. I mean, there's nothing wrong with flash and glam, but I mean, why? There has to be a why to it. Why is this flash and glam there? What purpose does it serve? How does it propel the story, the brand story forward? And that's the disconnect, I think, that Disney, and at least early on when Disney acquired Star Wars properties and with the Warner Brothers DC movies.
Uh-huh.
Lots of spectacle, but why? You can dazzle me visually, but I need to be emotionally invested, and that's where the why comes in. And it's like the axiom of mine that you I mean, you mentioned in social media, pretty is easy. Spectacle is easy. Making lots of pretty pictures and images and loud noises is easy. Telling a story to the people that are viewing it that makes them care about the spectacle is hard.
Product. Yeah, exactly.
They have to get in the user's head. They have to get into the fan of Marvel or DC or Star Wars. They have to get in their head, and what do they want? Where do they want this to go? What do they want to see? What can I surprise them with that they're going to be delighted about, instead of, you ruined my movie?
Yeah. Well, they tried to rebot. I mean, there's always that thing where with Star Wars, it's always been about how do we recapture the moment of Luke, I am your father. How do we recapture that surprise moment? And it became such a focus, they kind of lost sight of telling a story. And we got Luke Skywalker milking a alien with milk. I don't understand any of those choices.
Why?
It was the worst movie I think ever made. With
Questionable at best.
Why?
I don't know. It didn't do anything that even Mark Hamill came out later and said, I don't agree with the choices of this character, but he wanted a paycheck, so he took the money and shut up. But he is out there on record of saying like he didn't agree with Brian's choices. And I kind of feel like that, it became more about that, like we just said, the spectacle. Like we gotta get the big movie out, and in between we'll put these little movies out. There was a strategy, but my point is with DC, I don't know what the strategy is. I can't figure it out by looking at it as the industry that we're in, or even as a consumer. I can't see what the plan is. What are they, like, oh, we're building up the dark side. Are you still?
The strategy, from my perspective, the strategy is, how can we milk these suckers for some more money?
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with being true to any of the storylines or the characters or committed to the fans.
Yeah. I mean, with Marvel, you would watch a movie, and then that first Infinity, and I get it. Like, I'll make this comparison for anybody listening to be like, well, wait a minute. Yeah, I get it. Might happen. But there's a magical stone in Wonder Woman. It's the wishing stone. Okay. It's a legit thing, but it's like, it's one of those comic things. Problem is, every comic movie needs rules. Doesn't matter. I know there's a guy that wears tights and flies in from another planet. So I understand that is not any way based in reality. But here's the nerd argument. There's rules to sci-fi that you have to have in order to make sense for me to be able to follow.
The ability to suspend disbelief.
Yeah, I need this. Like, they changed the rules in this movie. It's not a spoiler when I say this, but the stone it started out with like you get one wish. And then it was like, you can do this. You can get 2 wishes. You can do this. Now you can beat the stone. Now you can do. And it was like, wait, what? And it just blew it.
That's exactly what made Star Wars such a great saga, is the details. It's all about the details. I mean, I have a 19-year-old son that you can ask him something about Star Wars and he'd be like, oh, no, because of this and that would never happen. And they're obviously not bringing that into the creative process when they're coming up with new film ideas.
It's just me as a nerd, but I'm a big continuity fan.
Well, yeah. I mean,
it makes sense.
Well, to me, it's almost like with Star Wars, there was like, okay, we're going to take what was done before, and I wonder about that, but I think the mindset, we're going to make it better. But to me, it didn't have there's a childlike wonder. There's a very basic aspect to the original Star Wars films, I think, that makes it so appealing. And it's
George Lucas said it was made for kids.
Well, but adults loved it. Comics were originally written for kids, but look at us. There's a little bit of child in all of us, and those movies appeal to that sense of childlike wonder that we retain. All of us do, even into adulthood.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of the newer Star Wars movies tried way too hard to be grown up.
Mm.
And lost that sense of childlike wonder.
Yeah.
But if you've watched The Mandalorian, it is to me
almost unfair.
To me, of all of the new of all of the post original film material that's been created,
Mm-hmm.
The Mandalorian feels so much closer to that original Star Wars saga than anything else that they've created.
Yeah, no,
It's so well done.
People will think that there's a lot of fan service in Mandalorian, and there actually is, and that's okay. You know why? Because it earned it. It
But
worked toward it. And
it makes sense. It's woven into the fabric of the larger story. I mean, to me, I don't know if you even remember, if you watched the original Star Wars movies, the little bits of dialogue in the background you would hear between stormtroopers when they would talk to each other, little thing, their reactions. All the stormtroopers had these sort of, when they were shot or when they were in battle, their exclamations and reactions were all kind of within the same sphere. They
Those are clones.
little things like that.
Their ability to hit a target.
Right, exactly. They're horrible shots. But little things like that. Jon Favreau has carried over those little things that matter.
Yeah.
They've carried over into the new films.
Yeah, and for those listening, like who's
or into the Mandalorian? I'm sorry.
He's the guy that did some of this. That's who Mitch is talking about. If you're watching this on video,
he helped kick it off.
The Marvels. He did the Marvel stuff with Iron Man. He was the guy that played Iron Man's chauffeur, Happy, and continues to reprise that role. I mean, he's an excellent storyteller. Sometimes he gets a little carried away. Some of the stories that he's told in the past and things he's done, he's nearly gotten sued for because he got a little too close. For example, the movie Elf. He had great ideas on that. That was one of his, and he, well, it wasn't his alone, but his creative direction and what he came in, he borrowed a little too close. Well, let's not say a little. Let's just be honest. He freaking just completely from the stop animation Rudolph film, and got in trouble for it later. But they really work it out. But he does that. He understands though the mentality of the people who he's telling the story to. He understands the audience. So in the example of Elf, he knew people were fans of that. He knew that that was a solid base to operate on that adults and kids love. And the movie Elf, with the casting that it had, at the time, really, Will Ferrell, that was kind of at the time of that. He has that mindset to understand that if you want to bring an audience along with you on that journey, to buy into the why for your product or why they should enjoy it. Why should I spend $12 on a matinee for a movie? Well, he earned my money, I would say, I think right at Guardians is when it clicked, because I saw that and I was like, really, a talking raccoon in a tree? You got to be joking me, man. Like, really? And then I went and I seen it and I was like, wow. And then examining it later, the music in that film is a character, not just the characters. The music is, and that's something in Wonder Woman 1984, to get back on track, it did not do. And you two will be surprised at this. Anybody that's not seen it, I'm sorry if it spoils it. I don't think it does, though. But it's just not there. Like, I didn't even get, like, with the cheetah scenes, you couldn't do Hungry Like a Wolf. You couldn't get... You couldn't get any of this?
A cheetah and a wolf.
I think there was one song, maybe. I can't even remember. It wasn't that... See, that's why we talk about memorable brands this year at NerdBrand, because it didn't really make me remember any of the scenes in the movie because I don't remember any of the music, and music is so important to a film. Like,
well, especially when you're doing, essentially, Wonder Woman 84, to me, it was supposed to be the way the first film was, and basically they stole the whole idea from Captain America, the first Avenger, but I digress.
Yeah, I wonder who's the Marvel guy here.
I digress. But if the first Wonder Woman was a period piece taking place during World War I,
yeah,
Wonder Woman, which you're tagging Wonder Woman 84, it's like it was a half-hearted, and granted, I haven't seen the whole film, but from the things I'm reading and what I've gleaned in the previews and clips I've seen, they don't really carry that, to me, where as far as it should go, as far as grounding it in that period. And I'm not even sure the people that wrote it sound like they even understood the 80s.
They did not. I'm just going to be flat out harsh about that because, watching the film 120 minutes in, she's Wonder Woman maybe twice, like wearing the outfit.
Mm-hmm.
Twice. And and this is in the trailer, but the mall scene is cringy. Like they tried to play on Richard Donner's Superman,
Oh, I've read
but
that a lot.
yeah, it didn't work. Unfortunately, there was a breaking of the fourth wall, and that's just like I only know a few characters to get away with that. One of them is Deadpool, and I think he kind of sealed the. This is what that looks like and how that works.
Well, because that's a quality the character already possesses. It's not something they
Right.
added.
Yeah. And so there was that, and then there was one other scene I forgot, but a lot of it was just her as Diana Prince, and we want to see our characters in their regalia. We want to see them doing stuff. We don't want to see them wearing a three-piece suit or whatever normal wear for them, doing things. I mean, it's a Wonder Woman film, not a Diana Prince film, and so there's that. And the 1984 stuff, the about as 1984 as it gets is the montage with Steven wearing the different outfits, and you see the fanny pack. Um, the color of the poster is very misleading in comparison to the feel of the film. I mean, it's like they tried to borrow from Ragnarok to kind of get a setup, but this
Well,
is not a Jack Kirby type film,
well, no, and to me the
so you
poster.
can't.
I mean, my understanding was that the poster was supposed to carry the flavor of the '80s, and it doesn't at all.
No, no, not at all. And Cheetah and how Cheetah was done, you've seen that also in the trailer. That's the other problem I have with DC. They show too much in the trailer. How she looks, I don't know what it is about Hollywood and cats, but they cannot make a cat person look like, I don't know.
Not disturbing.
Well, no, they can't. It's always disturbing. It's always like really bad. I mean, the movie Cats, it's like was I guess the top of how what not to do because cat butthole release that exists, because that's the only way people could find that interesting, because the way the fur was
that
rendered and
I
guy kind of looks like the cat
I
butt.
think that was done as a parody, I believe.
Yeah, and it's like, but with Cheetah, it's like you really didn't need to make her a mutant type Cheetah. This is a new thing. You could have just done something completely different.
I mean, do you think? I mean, do you think perhaps? I mean, there's
And
such
by
a.
the way, the ending, here's my pun on the ending. She comes in as this bird thing. Again, this is all in the trailer.
Oh, you mean in the armor? You
Yeah,
mean?
she's in the bird armor,
Armor.
and she's fighting a cat. Like, when did this become a face-off between Tweety and Sylvester? So I just leave it at that.
You have to wonder, though. I mean, they lean so hard on digital now.
Yeah.
And it's gotten good. I get that. I mean, you look at what Marvel did with, especially when Marvel started doing their own films. What they did with Mark Ruffalo's Hulk, I think is really, really good. It
cleaned up a
carries really
lot.
well.
Yeah, they took the hits that they were getting from the previous two, and were like, maybe we not do that again.
Yeah. So, but at the same time, I think there's still a place for practical effects, and you have to wonder sometimes. Maybe they should have just used practical makeup, maybe.
Yeah.
Or a hybrid somehow. Because you're right, it just still doesn't look great.
Yeah. I mean, the movie kind of like, this is probably so the point of the podcast, this is like my last DC movie. Yes, I said it. Because when I look at what Marvel's schedule is, and I look at Disney Plus, and I look at all the content they're coming out with, and I say that for a reason. And the quality is so much better, and I feel like it's worth my investment because I'm also investing my time, which is the most valuable thing you could have, and that any brand is requesting of its audience is their time. And so, will I watch Zack Snyder's Justice League? I don't voluntarily want to watch a train wreck.
Haven't you seen it before?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen one version. I don't need to see another version on how much worse it could be, because that's kind of what I feel at this point. And it's like, I think that there's just a lot of problems where DC maybe just needs to pull back and give it like a few years and kind of rethink the whole thing, because they just aren't able. There's just such a rush to get to a place that you cannot get to. I mean, it's a journey, that you have to go on, and you're asking a lot of people to kind of make that leap in that journey. It's sort of like if you put if you on a carpet, if you put a pad and you put one person on a pad and 60 feet away, you put this other person, another pad 60 feet away, and you ask this person without touching the carpet or whatever, the floor, go from this pad to that pad. They're going to look at you like you've lost your mind. And that's kind of what DC's done. It's like, we want to go from here to here, like that. And it's like, you can't, I don't know. I think it was just too much to ask. And here we are several films in, and they've already announced Wonder Woman 3. And I'm like, haven't we said enough already?
Well, I mean, what's funny is they announced it like right off the bat. But then you start seeing this drop in the numbers and everything. You're like, was it premature? Were they,
Yeah.
I mean, did they really, is this something they really believe in, or is it just more of a case of, well, we're just going to do it anyway?
And I don't think that it's any fault to Patty Jenkins, the director, or anybody that was on the creative staff. I honestly think what happened, and Mitch, you brought it up, is the whole thing with the whole 1984 thing. You're going to title it 1984. You're going to try to build it around this era. You're going to there's your anchor. That's the anchor that was not there, not the wishing stone. You could have had some other thing. But they lost that. The anchor was the era. So there was no music. There was no feeling that this is the era. Like in the first Wonder Woman film, it felt like World War One.
Yeah.
And
I mean, they
like
did a great job of putting you in that time.
Yeah. But this here, I mean, they could have literally been anywhere in any era. And some of the outfits that she wore is, she's a beautiful woman with unequivocally, but you can put her in a pizza outfit and she'd look good. But, if you're going to say 1984, like a lot of the outfits she wore, I mean, some of that's like almost retro today to wear. And, but a lot of it didn't really, like, there's a high skirt line, that she wore, like getting out of a car. And I'm like, a lot of that, women they wear that today.
Yeah. Well,
I'll put it to you this way. Where was the poofy hair? Was there any? Not really.
Big hair. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's just,
Laura's like, I don't want to go back to those days.
The lesson here is that there's just no shortcuts.
Yeah.
If you want to tell a solid brand story that's compelling and that really speaks to your customers, you have to put in the work to tell the story. And then any spectacle or bright, shiny things you want to put around it, it has to have a purpose. And that purpose is propelling the brand message in the way it needs to be directed.
Yeah, and the message was, this is Wonder Woman in 1984. Not Wonder Woman chases some magical stone guy and tries to stop him from making wishes and making other people's wishes true. That's the thing. There was just so many drop-offs, and I can't go too far because I don't want to get into too spoiler territory. So everything I'm saying you can pretty much glean from, the trailer. But it's just, that, and by the way, when I talk about the stone and everything, and I know it seems like a stretch, I do remember Loki with his wishy pointy stone stick that came out with the Avenger movie, and everybody was like, okay, so he pokes them in the chest with the magic stone and makes them change their minds and everything. And then it was like 2 or 3 movies later, it's like, no, that was the Mind Stone. That's why. And then you're like, okay, I buy that now. Like when you figured out it was an Infinity Stone, it was the Mind Stone, and that's how he was changing people's minds and how that worked. Because, at the end of the day, you can just poke anybody with it, like, go get me bagels. Boop. But now, now when you find out it's the Mind Stone, you're like, that makes sense. With the Wishy Stone, it's like, what? This doesn't make any sense. But, in the comic book, there's other stones, just like the Infinity Stones, that thing is attached to specific gods and stuff.
Yeah.
Like you could have had it easily. That could have been the setup for like 3 more Wonder Woman films and, incorporating Batman and Superman and other characters in it, and just make Wonder Woman the character, the anchor of DC. Sorry, Michael, I love you, but they already got Wonder Woman.
That goes back to what we were saying earlier about they weren't staying true to the fan, and they weren't staying true to the details of the entity that they were working with.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there are qualities about all those DC characters that are just as powerful and just as compelling as the Marvel ones. Now, I will freely admit that I think that there's Marvel does a better job historically in grounding their characters on an emotional level, and fashion them in such a way that the average person can relate to. Because it's like they can look at a Marvel character and say, yeah, I can relate to that. I felt that
Yeah.
way. I've been through that. This is how a real person would react in this situation. To me, that's always been one of the hurdles that DC characters have had to leap.
Well, that's not just DC characters. It seems like all of DC films and filmography, since, like I said, Man of Steel, it's just been this pathway that goes nowhere other than to put all these characters in the same movie. And that was not the plan. The spectacle was all of these things, these different character movies are leading to an event that is the spectacle. And it's earning that, not just saying, oh, we're going to put them all in the same movie. Like, Marvel fans have wanted all these characters in the same movie for years, as much as we have. But what's the mechanism? What is the strategy of that? How do we get there? What does that look like? How do we get to that success, to that, moment of like, wow, look at what happened, and every
Right.
business owner wants that with their own business. How do we get to that moment of like people become advocates of our brand without us having to spend advertising money? Because believe it or not, it can happen. It's like with content. I brought that up because of Google's update is very content, I believe, oriented, of quality of content, which they've said that for years. What does quality of content mean? Well, something useful, something entertaining, something useful, more and less to that. And um, I'm sorry, I just can't invest more time and money with DC movies. I hate to say that, being such a fan of it, but I'm not I'm not really too thrilled about the Robert Pattinson Batman. I kind of feel like it's like throwing villains in my face, like, hey, look at what we did with the Penguin and the Riddler. And I'm like, I could pick up a comic and see all that. I don't really need
Well, I
that.
mean, you wonder with Batman, you just wonder if there's just maybe, I wonder if there's going to be some Batman fatigue.
I mean,
Because if
it's
there's a
already
character, they've gotten so much mileage out of that character over the last couple of decades
yeah.
that it's like maybe he needs a rest.
Well, I think that for the podcast to wrap it up is that, if you want to, just from my point of view, if you want to watch something that's really creative, has a really good take on a character, watch Batman Gotham by Gaslight. It's a animated film that DC did of Batman. Most animated films ain't that great either. Let's be honest. The third act, they just can't seem to gel together to finish and wrap up. I kind of understand. The endings are hard. But Gotham by Gaslight, watch it. It's only maybe an hour and 20 minutes, but it's amazing what they've done with the character and those around him. And to me, that'd be worthy of a live action right there. It'd be very different. As far as Wonder Woman, unfortunately, she just not gotten a lot of. There's maybe 2 animated features. They're not great, but there's 2, and then you've got the live action stuff. I like Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, but the way things are going for DC right now, I mean, they're just heading toward a recast of everything. So I don't know how that's going to work. I kind of want to not leave Laura out too much of the conversation, but Laura, I mean, what is your thoughts on just this? Because you're the woman here. So if anything, we're talking about a character that speaks to your gender more than ours.
Well, that's what they've been trumpeting about Wonder Woman, is that now we have a character that appeals to women, and that is
therein lies the problem, is that they're pandering to women, not so much. It's not just a great character. They're being really careful to pander to women.
Okay, so send all your emails to.
I mean, what you're saying is it's.
Well, let her finish. I can tell she's got more to say. Let her finish. Yeah. You don't have the right plumbing to have an opinion here, brother.
I did see the first Wonder Woman movie, and I was it was good.
Yeah.
Until we got to the end, and then the end, I was like, hello? And it lost. I mean, it just fell flat for me at the end. It's like the storyline just completely fell apart, and it was all about making her look cool as she walks off into the flames, and it had nothing to do with the storyline, which upset me. And that's what I mean by pandering to women. It's not so much in she's really doing something great. It's just she's looking great while she's doing it. And that's me.
Good point, though. Yeah.
No.
Here's my proposal for an ending of the first Wonder Woman movie. And I'm not a writer. But this is what I would have done. And it's going to make people mad. Because her whole goal was to defeat the God of War. And her thinking naively was that if she did that, she would end the war. Steve Trevor was a character that died in the film. I would have made him the God of War the entire time. And she had to kill him in the end. Now, that would have lined up with Superman, Man of Steel, where he had to kill Zod. Because Zod was the last remaining Kryptonian in Kal-El's mind. And he had to snap his neck to stop him from murdering people. It's the same tone, same vibe. And it would have actually worked, I think.
Never mind, Superman doesn't kill.
Well, look.
Or supposedly Batman. I won't cross that Rubicon.
Batman in film kills. Batman in the comics had a gun one time. So the whole stigma of Batman, like 1950s Batman would crush people's skulls or step on their necks or whatever. It was he's brutal. He's not a friendly guy. Frank Miller's Batman.
Violent.
Yeah, he's very violent. Frank Miller's Batman, at the end of that, The Dark Knight, Return of the Dark Knight, there's a quote that he says to this gang leader, and he's going to fight him, and he says, "I'm going to break every bone in your body because I can." I'm like, whoa, and he does. And that's Batman. So this whole thing, you're like, oh, Batman doesn't kill, blah, blah, blah. Look, yeah, he does. Yeah, he does. Anybody remember Michael Keaton coming down the way? He's got a bomb in his hand, sticks it on a guy, tosses the guy down a tunnel. Okay, the bomb didn't come out with confetti going pow. So I really don't care that they kill. I don't. If you're even Christopher Nolan's Batman, which was the most Batman rooted in reality, he killed. That's just the world. That's I don't know where that comes from, other than it's
from the comics.
It comes out of comics, but it comes out of it a later time. Even the comics have had different, iterations of Batman. Let's be honest. So I mean, that's a one part of the comics out of the 70, well now 80 years of Batman. But yeah, I mean, I would have had Wonder Woman have to kill Steve because Steve turned out to be the God of War, and you could have spun that into the next movie. Maybe she got it wrong and didn't really kill him, because her heart was still attached because she fell in love. And so in the sequel, guess who's back? And that could have made more sense than her just, I don't know. I mean, spoiler. 3, 2, 1. She's in the museum with, Barbara, who's Cheetah. And they open up the packaging. They got to go through these artifacts and date them. And they open it up and there's the stone. Barbara's holding it and she I think she wants coffee. It doesn't make sense. There's a lot of going on here. It doesn't make sense, but she wants coffee. So some guy just appears with 2 lattes and they get one. And again, the wishing thing, that's why it doesn't make any sense. That was the one wish. Barbara wishes 3 more times. But anyways, then Wonder Woman gets it.
She didn't say it was a wish.
You can kind of get all technical about that, but weird.
isn't that kind of in Aladdin? Isn't that one of the things he had to say that it was a wish because the first time he gypped him?
Yeah, he did. He found a way to gyp him. But, this is a stone. So the idea was you hold it, but then later on you have to actually hold it and say it. And then, I don't want to spoil too much more, but something else happens in order to change how it works. And they keep changing how it works. And that's my problem.
So their storyline wasn't solid enough that there could be rules. They had to keep changing the rules in order to jam the storyline into it.
Yeah. So they kept jamming crap in and changing how the wishes work and how the stone works. You can't, the Infinity, the Mind Stone and the Loki's Pokey Stick, you can do whatever you want with that until you...
Pokey Stick?
The Loki Pokey Stick, that worked fine until you got to Iron Man and hit the thing in his chest and it didn't work. And he's like, well, it happens to everybody, man. And that was a great scene. But other than that, there really wasn't an explanation on why that stopped Iron Man.
Because he didn't touch him. It wasn't touching him. He was touching something inorganic.
There you go, internet.
Metal's conductive.
Yeah, there you go, internet. Answered, certifiable by the nerds. But Diana, holds the stone, and much later on, like Steve appears, like in that moment, because there's a lot of problems with everybody. Like, after 100 years, she's not over this guy. Well, I mean, you fall in love like that and lose somebody. Yeah, you're gonna be like, there's another Christmas without so and so who's not done that.
Well, again, it's another parallel with Captain America, because Cap was in love with
Yeah, when he died the first time. Yeah.
What's her name? God,
Peggy.
With Peggy, yeah. I mean, he was in love with Peggy. He carried that torch 50 years later. I mean,
and then he had the hots for her niece, which was a little awkward, but whatever.
Yeah. Actually happened in the again. It's consistency. That's what happened.
Yeah.
In the comics.
But yeah, I mean, I don't really, I can excuse that. I really can, but I just have a hard time with how the story ties together and some of the events that occur. When you go see it, maybe we'll do a spoiler review just kind of for, kicks and giggles. But at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, you've got to earn there's work that goes into that, and not pander to your audience, not pander to people. Spectacle is like, if your goal is just that and there's nothing meaningful behind it, then everything you've done it's just not going to last. It's like a flash in a pan. It's done. And that's
that may work for awareness, but doesn't work for actually building your brand and moving people to your brand.
Yeah, we don't sell brand awareness. I mean, that's obviously part of our job as an agency and what we do, but our goal is there's a long-term plan on how this brand is going to continue to move and survive and pivot. I hate to use that word still, but it's true. And that's what we do. We come up constantly with strategies on how we can do that. And you can say, well, that sounds like marketing. Well, yeah, but branding and marketing should be working together, not separate. So, but anyways, that's our show on spectacle and Wonder Woman and elements of storytelling. And, don't make magical stones that just grant wishes like Lucky Charms or something. There's no elves that live in a tree. Sorry. They don't have cookies. They're not making cookies. They're making, microphones.
I don't know where that came from.
Yeah. Well, anyways, if you're watching this or listening to this, feel free to go on social media, facebook.com/NerdBrand Agency. We're NerdBrand Agency everywhere on social media. So you can find us, leave a comment, say, hey, love the show. What about asking about this? We'll talk about it if you want to give us some references. Or you can just go to nerdbrandagency.com/podcast and listen to the latest episode there. And appreciate you guys coming out and listening and watching, and you all for doing the show with me today. And I want to remind everybody to remember, keep your nerd brand strong.